And I would argue our growing lone parent stats, female lone parent stats, show that many men do take off. If it's a woman's choice and they choose life, often the men will choose to walk away. You'd be surprised, actually, I am often surprised at how many women don't feel even a hint of self-reproach when they demand that men be present, if they want them there, but absent if they choose to push them away. And I just wonder, when did we proudly and publicly sanction this kind of illogical selfishness? And I think we can call our sisters to a higher ground. I think this harms all of us, but it harms those of us who would not choose abortion in particular. It's the woman who never viewed abortion as a choice, who must take then the responsibility onto herself with absolutely no social pressure to force the father to man up and take responsibility for his part in conceiving a child. I would challenge every girl here today to ask their boyfriends how they feel about abortion. And if that guy says, "It's your choice, sweetie, this is just such a cute, cool thing to say," then I would dump him for being a spineless, sorry, sad excuse of a boyfriend. Get him to man up to the responsibility he shares every time you have sex and demand nothing less than a well-thought-out position on this. And if his well-thought-out position is that he's pro-choice, then dump him just the same. Because he's in it for the sex and not too much more. Men are now accustomed to viewing fatherhood as a choice, and they shouldn't be. We are empowering them to be irresponsible, and they only wanted to have the sex, right? What's wrong with them? They don't need to stick around to help out should sex lead to one of the natural outcomes. I've given you some reasons why abortion is not a female-friendly thing to do and how I came to that position through a worldview that looks at an ultrasound and says, I can see what that is. And given that all of this seems very obvious to me now, as a 33-year-old living off campus and working and not in this world anymore, thought it might be helpful to sort of consider the reasons why I know my view isn't the mainstream view, in particular on campus. I think there's some reasons why it appears to be so fringe. One of them is it goes back to the Supreme Court of Canada's decision in Morgentaler back in 1988. What the Supreme Court said in the Morgentaler decision is actually very different from what we hear around us. None of the justices said that there is no competing rights between the woman and the fetus. None of the justices said that there is no role for the state to defend the unborn at some stages. I might remind everybody that Morgentaler himself will not do late-term abortions. But that legal situation is oft misrepresented, and it's taken on a truth of its own. Another reason is I think we live in a very, very independent culture. Our culture looks to individualism, to freedom, to choice, and holds those up as in almost every situation as the highest values. I am a fan of freedom and individualism and choice, don't get me wrong, but with those come duties and responsibilities. There's always another side of the coin. And caring for a newborn is a community event. There's no doubt about it. I see it with many of my friends having children right now. You need help, and in our culture, it may be very difficult to find. The reality is we have very, very weak communities, and it makes it very hard to see how you could carry a child for 9 months, even if you don't plan on keeping that baby yourself. It makes it very hard to see how it could be workable. We also live in a very short-term culture, sort of 30-minute sitcom. 9 months feels like a lifetime, so there's that. And then I'll refer back to the false ideas on equality. And there's one condom ad that really got it better than every pro-choice activist in the country. And the condom ad showed a larger-than-life undo button. It's my favorite computer feature. Control-Z, Control-Z, Control-Z. You make a mistake, you do Control-Z, right? Undo. So this condom ad shows a huge undo button, and it shows this man hammering away at it, but it won't budge, it won't move. And of course the idea is if you don't wear a condom and you get pregnant or you get an STD, you can't undo it. And that is one truthful ad. You certainly can't undo a pregnancy, particularly if you get an abortion. There are always repercussions. So those are some of the reasons. You could probably think of a lot more why I think this view is very counterintuitive. I'll close by returning briefly to the email I started with from a young woman. Keep it, she wrote. Maybe in 10 years. I want to go to school, get a degree, travel. I am too young to become a parent. I still feel like a child sometimes. I want to be able to support my future baby financially and mentally to the best of my abilities. I cannot give that right now. And that was me 10 years ago, hands down. You want to go to school, you want to get a degree, you want to get two. I definitely honor those ambitions. But with every abortion, we teach a lesson, and it goes something like this. I can't be successful with a pregnancy, let alone a baby. Don't make exceptions for this pregnancy. Professor by professor, employer by employer, boyfriend by boyfriend, we are teaching the delusion that life goes on after a pregnancy exactly as it did before. And we will not make forays into accepting women as we are with our reproductive potential unless we stop having abortions. And you may also, just putting it out there, you may also find you like being a mother, and that would be fine too. The statistics in Canada today show that women are actually having fewer children than they'd like because they wake up somewhere around my age and realize they'd actually like to have kids, they like kids. And at this point, it's borderline too late. If you got pregnant tomorrow and your degree takes you 5 years instead of 4, no one dies. Ambition is very, very good, but there's more than one road to get you there to fulfill those ambitions. So I hope that if I have conveyed one thing, it is that access to abortion as a premise for empowerment is a point of view, and a point of view only, and it's a point of view that is built up on a house of cards. There is a power, a reassurance, and a simple dignity in being pro-life, particularly for women. Thank you for listening.